back to this Real America's Voice news break. I'm Terrence Bates. The first White House press briefing of the week is scheduled to happen here within the next couple of minutes. We'll, of course, be covering it for you live. We'll take you there live. You can see the podium there. We're just waiting for White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt to take the podium, and then we'll take you there. In the meantime, later this afternoon, President Trump will attend the swearing-in ceremony for the new chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Paul Atkins. The ceremony is going to happen in the Oval Office. Atkins was officially sworn in on Monday. He previously served as an SEC commission member from 2002 to 2008. And with graduation season right around the corner, President Trump and his speechwriters are getting to work on at least 2 graduation speeches. 47 says he has accepted invitations to deliver the commencement addresses at the University of Alabama as well as at West Point. Last year, then President Joe Biden addressed the graduating cadets at West Point as well. The late Pope Francis's funeral is going to be held on Saturday, and President Trump is expected to attend. In the meantime, we're also learning that Pope Francis died of a cerebral stroke, which led to a coma and irreversible heart failure. A public viewing as he lies in state will reportedly happen tomorrow through Friday. All of that will be at St. Peter's Basilica. Back here in the U.S., President Trump has ordered that all American flags at the White House and other federal government buildings and military installations around the world be flown at half-staff in memory of the Pope. Francis will be buried in the Papal Basilica of St. Maria Maggiore, as was his personal request. Well, gone are the days of the Biden-era loan forgiveness program. If you owe student loans, get ready to pay up or else. The Department of Education says it will begin collecting on student loans that are in default next month. The collection efforts will include garnishing of wages. Right now, about 5.3 million borrowers are in default on their federal student loans. The Trump administration's move brings an end to a period of leniency that's been in place since the COVID-19 pandemic began. In fact, no federal student loans have been referred to collection since March of 2020, which is 5 years ago. Collection efforts will begin May 5th through the Treasury Department's offset program, which withholds government payments like tax refunds, federal salaries, and other benefits from people who are past due on their debts to the government. After a 30-day notice, the department will then begin garnishing wages. Vice President J.D. Vance is in India this morning working to broker a bilateral trade deal in tariffs. He's meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who says that progress is being made on an agreement. Today's meeting comes on the heels of President Trump meeting with major U.S. retailers on Monday, including Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, and Target. The discussion focused on the Trump tariffs and the likelihood that they'll raise the cost of everyday goods, particularly those that are imported. The retailers in attendance rely on imported goods, with more than half of Walmart and Target's imports coming from China. At the moment, China is the only country not enjoying a tariff reprieve amid its refusal to negotiate. As a result, Chinese products are under a 145% levy. Well, that's a quick check of your headlines. As always, we appreciate you being here with us. I'm Terrence Bates. Tax day may have passed, but for millions of Americans, the real trouble is just beginning. If you missed the April 15th deadline, or if you still owe back taxes, the IRS is ramping up enforcement, and every day you wait only makes things worse. With over 5,000 new tax liens filed daily and tools like property seizures, bank levies, and wage garnishments, the IRS is applying pressure at levels we haven't seen in years. Increased administrative scrutiny means collections are moving fast. There is good news, though. There's still time for Tax Network USA to help. If you're self-employed or if you're a business owner, even if your books are a mess, they've got it covered for you. Tax Network USA specializes in cleaning up financial chaos and getting you back on track fast. Even after the deadline, it's not too late to regain control. Your consultation is completely free, and acting now could stop penalties, threatening letters, and surprise levies before they escalate. Call 800-905-8000 or visit tnusa.com/RAV. You may have missed April 15th, but you haven't run out of options. Let Tax Network USA help before the IRS makes the next move.
I'm not hearing it. I'm not hearing it. I'm not hearing it. All right, welcome to it here in Washington, D.C. Glad to have you along for the conversation. We've got a big special program in front of you for today. It's a big deal for us. We got three big things to get started today. Number one, the United States about to eliminate a whole list of controversial dyes and other ingredients companies have put into our food, all part of making America healthy again, led by Bobby Kennedy. Number two, Klaus Schwab resigned from running the World Economic Forum, and then one day later they opened an investigation into fraud by the man who ran the place for 50 years. I'm guessing he lined his pockets, so not so surprising. And number three, the stock market rallied again Tuesday after a major sell-off Monday, but zooming in, we have to take a closer look. The Dow could be headed for its worst April performance since 1932. Now, looking at the numbers this morning, a little bit better. They're going to be up again today, about 500-600 points to open. And we'll have to see how today goes before we see the final numbers settle in for April of this year. It's going to be very telling. This, as gold hit a record-breaking $3,500 an ounce yesterday for the first time in history. A CNBC survey, that is, finds that President Trump's approval ratings on the economy are the worst of his presidential career, largely driven by Democrats' disapproval, of course, and no surprise there. But he's also losing some confidence with some independents, and that's not good. But as evidenced by the market's behavior the last several days, opinions are changing day to day due to the trade uncertainty. The International Monetary Fund released its forecast yesterday, predicting that the United States will grow by only 1.8% in 2025, down almost a full point relative to last year's growth rate. The IMF believes the U.S. will avoid a full-blown recession, but it has increased the odds from 27% in October to 40% today. J.P. Morgan, a little less confident, saying a 60% chance of recession, but the CEO of Chevron says everyone should calm down. Listen to this.
Trump will win. Yeah. There's no way that China can retaliate in a way that doesn't do much more damage to their own economy than to ours. Look, if you look at the financial markets, the net worth of American companies is multiple times higher than all the Chinese companies. So we have incredible leverage. They can't possibly get out of their economic, they're in a bit of a mini depression themselves. Nobody in the media seems to be following that, but their stock market has crashed. Their economy is way down even further than ours has. So I think when you talk about pain threshold, there is no way that a tit-for-tat strategy works for China. What has to happen next, if Trump is going to win, and he will win, is to get these side deals cut as quickly as possible with Europe, with Canada, with Japan, with Korea, and you basically make China the man outside that's still standing at the table. I think that strategy works. Right. I think China is going to lose if they try to retaliate. It just doesn't work for them.
It doesn't work for them, quite clearly. Now, this is all contingent on the United States striking deals with our allies, most importantly with China. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's comments yesterday are what caused a huge spike in the market. You see, he held a closed-door meeting with investors, reportedly telling them that, quote, there will be a de-escalation in President Donald Trump's trade war with China in the very near future. We'll see if that's true, although reports indicate that negotiations between the two have yet to start. Sources say that Bessent believes a deal is possible in the near future. I don't doubt that a deal is possible and that Trump has some negotiating tricks up his sleeve, but we need to see a resolution, and pretty quickly. China's still not playing nice, that's for sure. In fact, you talk about some twisted irony. China's holding an informal meeting with the United Nations next week to blast the United States for bullying China on the trade front. This coming from a country committing human rights violations left and right, keeping Taiwan under its heel, and more recently threatening South Korea with sanctions should it continue to export products that use China's rare earth minerals to U.S. defense firms. Who's the bully? China has also tried to blacklist the U.S. from acquiring rare earth minerals, which China has significant monopoly of, but the U.S. has been getting the materials from other middlemen, like South Korea. And China is trying to bully South Korea into following its agenda as well. Again, this is why the trade war is so important. China is showing its true colors more than ever as a trade tyrant, but will we actually get anywhere? Former economic advisor Steve Moore feels confident. Here's part of what he has to say.
Trump will win.
Yeah.
There's no way that China can retaliate in a way that doesn't do much more damage to their own economy than to ours. Look, if you look at the financial markets, the net worth of American companies is multiple times higher than all the Chinese companies. So we have incredible leverage. They can't possibly get out of their economic, they're in a bit of a mini depression themselves. Nobody in the media seems to be following that, but their stock market has crashed. Their economy is way down even further than ours has. So I think when you talk about pain threshold, there's no way that a tit-for-tat strategy works for China. What has to happen next, if Trump is going to win, and he will win, is to get these side deals cut as quickly as possible with Europe, with Canada, with Japan, with Korea, and you basically make China the man outside that's still standing at the table. I think that strategy works.
Right.
I think China is going to lose if they try to retaliate. It just doesn't work for them.
It doesn't work for them. You hear it there again. China is taking a hit. There's no doubt about that. In fact, the World Trade Organization projects that Chinese exports to the United States are going to drop 77% in 2025. You think that doesn't hurt? This is a huge win for companies that have already invested in the United States and should motivate many more to do so, like we've been seeing. But it's going to take time, friends. President Trump knows that. We know that, which is why he met with major retailers like Walmart and Home Depot yesterday to discuss the way forward. Society's become accustomed to instant gratification, getting what we want when we want it without any delay at all, right now. And on many issues, President Trump has delivered just that. The slew of executive orders he signed on day one, the jaw-dropping change in our border security is less than 100 days. It's all impressive. But this is an issue that can't be so easily remedied. Here is the former CEO of Home Depot describing the complexity of what we're dealing with. Listen.
Trying to balance the global supply chain is a monumental task. I mean, the level of complexity, the relationships with countries. I'm involved in one business, Steve, and we get components from 60 countries to try to put together an airframe. So if you look at it, we've developed a tote board, quite honestly, to try to keep up with the rate of change. We put the tariff there by country, and as they change and initiatives and exceptions are made, put in the number, and boom, it rolls down. Now we know our exposure to the cost of the tariffs. So this is a monumental task. You think the internal combustion engine has thousands of parts from across the world that come together to make that part. Right. And even in the case with, you talked about the retailers, the number of components and products that come into Home Depot, Target, Lowe's is overwhelming number, right. And it's going to take a while to reverse something that's been on for this globalization for maybe 2 decades or more.
2 decades or more. We want to return to American manufacturing. We also want more partnerships with our allies, partnerships with countries that are not China, so that the rest of the world can also gradually crawl out from under the CCP's boot. It's incredibly important. We're going to talk more about that after the break. Glad you're here today in Washington, D.C. I am. We're going to be visiting with a number of the members of the President's Cabinet. We never know who's going to show up. It's going to happen midday today, and then I'll be back here for America's Voice Live on Real America's Voice to share that with you this afternoon at 3 o'clock. I look forward to seeing you then, and tomorrow morning for a special edition of the Steve Gruber Show from Washington. We'll be right back. special edition of the Steve Gruber Show, live in the nation's capital here in Washington, D.C., where we'll be visiting with a number of the members of the president's cabinet today, maybe some other folks as well. Also, the weather is going to be spectacular here, 80 degrees. 80 degrees in Washington today. Hard to beat that, right? All right, so going into the break, we talked about getting countries out from under the CCP's boot. We really need to do that. Vice President J.D. Vance made this encouraging announcement just yesterday. Here he is.
When President Trump and Prime Minister Modi announced in February that our countries aim to more than double our bilateral trade to $500 billion by the end of the decade, I know that both of them meant it. And I'm encouraged by everything our nations are doing to get us there. As many of you are aware, both of our governments are hard at work on a trade agreement built on shared priorities, like creating new jobs, building durable supply chains, and achieving prosperity for our workers. In our meeting yesterday, Prime Minister Modi and I made very good progress on all of those points. And we are especially excited to formally announce that America and India have officially finalized the terms of reference for the trade negotiation. I think this is a vital step. Thank you. I believe this is a vital step toward realizing President Trump's and Prime Minister Modi's vision, because it sets a roadmap toward a final deal between our nations. I believe there is much that America and India can accomplish together.
Yep, this is good news. Probably another contributing factor to the bump in the market yesterday. And looking at the futures again today, plus 620 on the Dow. So good news today. So now the concern shifts toward the business owners who are having to wait out this kind of trade uncertainty. If they're being affected by tariffs, where can they find relief? That's a big question. Cutting interest rates? Listen to this business owner's take on the Federal Reserve and interest rates today, which obviously Donald Trump would like to see lowered as well. Here it is.
Right now, I'm not going to buy a new business jet and pay 8% interest because we finance almost everything. And I'm going to wait for the interest rates to go down. And if they don't go down, then I'm not going to buy another jet. I'm not going to buy more equipment. I'm going to wait for it to suit down. Who wants to pay 8-9% for equipment? I mean, it's not going to happen. And that's Powell's strategy. He hates Trump. He hates Trump with a passion, and he's going to do whatever he can to damage. He should worry about America and not worry about hating Trump. And that's what it comes down to.
Interestingly enough, Powell last week, when he was talking, he mentioned that he's having conversations with CEOs on Main Street, and they're all telling him they're in trouble. So he has the real-time anecdotal data to be making the right decisions. He's instead going to wait until he's got rear-view mirror data 3-6 months.
Well, that's why President Trump is now calling him too late. That's his new nickname for Powell, and that's why.
John Cassimatidis there, by the way, he is a billionaire. And when he says he's not going to pay 8% for equipment, that means he's not hiring either. So when these interest rates stick too high, it slows down the entire economy. American economist Jeremy Siegel agrees. Here's what he had to say.
I do believe there are persuasive economic reasons for the Fed to aggressively lower interest rates right now. We know we're going to get a increase in inflation in the short term from the Trump tariffs. I call that the Trump bump. We're going to get that. But what we need to wonder about, is that getting into long-term inflationary expectations? That's exactly the topic that Jay Powell was worried about last week. Is that getting into it? The answer is definitively no. Actually, I've been looking at those long-term inflationary expectations, and they've actually been going down.
So the question is, will Jerome Powell play ball? President Trump says Powell cares more about politics than the economy. And James O'Keefe, you know him, of course, just released this footage undercover of a journalist conversation with a Fed employee that seems to back that claim up. Watch this.
Trump is a crazy person. It's very clear. I mean, he's a dumb guy.
Does he hate Trump? And is the feeling neutral?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah. He wants to be remembered in history as somebody who held the line against like Trump and somebody who helped the economy. Yeah. And Trump was president. He wanted to stimulate the economy.
Right.
But he wouldn't do it. And he started raising interest rates, doing the opposite that Trump wanted. So the feeling is this, that we don't want Trump to be in government.
Right.
So the feeling is this: we don't want Trump to be in government, so we'll do whatever he doesn't want. Nice, right? Who knows if this guy even knows what he's talking about, but it's not a good look for Powell and the Fed at all. With the evidence mounting in favor of interest rate cuts, Powell should put aside politics, and he should do it now. As far as the markets go, an analysis of the day-to-day changes isn't going to shed a ton of light. We're seeing massive rallies and then sell-offs from one day to the next, depending on the days. Everything could change quickly as this trade war evens out. All right, we'll keep an eye on all of that as we continue to work towards stability in this country. Now, interest rates are what? About 7%, I believe, right? That's about where we are. And the unemployment rate is at the unemployment rate is at 4.2%. Inflation is at 2.4%. They're exactly mirrored opposites, right? But those are good numbers. People are saying, well, it's the worst April since 1932 on the stock market. It could be, maybe. Well, even if it were, the numbers are wholly different. In 1932, the unemployment rate was 20%, not 4.2%. Inflation was a lot higher. It wasn't 2.4%. The fundamentals of this economy are strong, and if Jerome Powell would step up, bring interest rates down by 0.25%, 0.5%, 0.75%, it would turn this economy on. People would start buying houses again, used cars, and toys like RVs and motorcycles and quads and all of those things. That would stimulate the economy, and the manufacturing would increase because we're seeing a lot of those things being onshored because of the tariffs. Donald Trump's onto the right path here. Is there going to be pain? Sure there is. Be some upheaval? Of course there is. But in the long run, this had to be done. This had to be corrected. And China, down 77% of what they're going to import into the United States, oh, that's going to make a big difference to them and us. It's the Steve Gruber Show live from Washington, D.C. I'll be back in a moment. Back at it now. Pope Francis' last words have been revealed to some extent now from his, and the funeral is going to be Saturday in Rome at the Vatican City. Donald Trump will be there with First Lady Melania, so the President and the First Lady are going to the funeral of the 88-year-old pontiff who died early Monday from a stroke and then a heart attack. It began at St. Peter's Basilica on Easter Sunday. Francis hesitating to get into the Pope-mobile, you know, the machine that he rides around in. 50,000 people were there. He asked his longtime assistant, "Do you think I can manage it?" They encouraged him that he could. They encouraged that he could after he was brought to the balcony. They brought him, and then he went around and he said, "Thank you for bringing me back to the square." St. Peter's Basilica, the square there. Widely known as the People's Pope, he told his personal healthcare assistant, "Thank you for bringing me back to the square." He first showed signs of illness 5:30 a.m. Easter Monday. Fell into a coma about an hour later, according to the Vatican News, before falling into a coma. Francis made a gesture of farewell with his hand. to his assistant. He knew. He knew. Interesting, though. Thank you for bringing me back to see these people. Controversial pope for sure, a left-of-center pope. A lot of Catholics hoping for a more conservative pontiff this time around. We'll see if that happens. Hard to say. Hard to say. All right, we're going to keep digging into the economy. Grover Norquist joining me next, Americans for Tax Reform, looking at the tariffs, the unemployment rate, the interest rate, how it impacts you, and what it's going to mean for China if their exports to America drop by almost 80%. Can they survive that? China's economy is not nearly as good as they'd like you to believe, or as they've told the world. It's just not. Back with Grover Norquist and more on the economy after this. There's a bit of a whisper campaign inside the Beltway here in Washington, D.C., where I am today, about raising taxes on incomes over $1 million to 40% is the number that I've heard. Donald Trump promised not to raise taxes on anyone, but there's a whisper campaign going on that he might raise that top marginal tax rate to 40%. Joining me Grover Norquist, Americans for Tax Reform president. He's here with me. And Grover, good to see you this morning. What about this whisper campaign of a 40% marginal tax rate for those incomes over $1 million? What do you make of that?
Oh, well, it could start as a lot lower than that. But the whispering campaign, the political campaign, started 27 days ago. It started with the liaison person from the White House, a White House staffer. The Wall Street Journal exposed who was driving it. They do report, other journals report that the vice president supports this effort. He has in the past been a kind of liberal when he was younger, and perhaps this is his new position. He likes tax increases. But the big problem was Vance's staff person, his former chief of staff. That's the guy who's been driving this. And he's been out telling people on the Hill that the president likes this, okay, which was not true. And then people on the Hill said, well, I don't know. So they started to get, well, maybe. And there was a rule that everybody lived by, which was you don't draw lines in the sand and say heck no to any one thing, or it's in or it's out, because they didn't want to freeze the negotiations. And that appealed to everything, okay? And so sometimes when someone would ask somebody in the administration, what's the policy? I say, well, everything's on the table. That was not an endorsement of this stupid idea. Yesterday, the president put out a statement saying that this would be political death, that this was how the George Herbert Walker Bush destroyed his presidency, wiped out the Republicans in the midterm elections, and that no matter how high you raised it, the liberals would never give you any credit for being fair or whatever. They always accuse Republicans of raising taxes on the rich. That's what they do. That's what they say. It doesn't matter what the policy is. We doubled it per child tax exemption per child tax deduction in tax credit in this last bill, and that was for the rich.
Right.
Everything was for the rich. So the president quite aptly and correctly said this is the stupidest idea in Western Hemisphere at present, which is a pretty good way of saying. He didn't say no, never. It's not. It can't be on the table because everyone's agreed not to say that. But when you give three examples of how this would destroy the modern Republican presidency and the Republican House and Senate, that's probably a big hint. And of course, the Republicans in Congress don't want to have anything to do with this.
They're not going to do it.
They were being lied to by the staffer, the guy who's in charge of negotiating with the House and the Senate, as to what the president wanted. This was the same game. You remember when we were all told that the president wanted two bills. One bill with immigration and energy and defense, because those were so easy. And then we should do those, and then we do the bill on taxes.
Well, let me ask you this, Grover. Let me ask you this. As you look, obviously, the calculus is political. The Republicans got beaten up pretty good in the midterms of 2022, had a very good night November 5th, 2024. But you look at the impact so far on 401ks of the stock market's volatility here because of the tariffs and so forth. I expect Donald Trump to secure as many deals as possible. We heard that he's working with India pretty closely now, close to a deal. The EU, they've got some talks that look like they're going somewhere. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan. He needs to get some of those things locked into place so that this economy will move forward. He needs Jerome Powell, he really does, to lower interest rates, which should happen at this point or sometime soon, because there is this calculus on the midterm elections 2026, correct?
Yes, we need strong growth going into 2026. We had a good tax cut in 2017, but remember, it didn't take effect until 2018. We spent all year, we didn't sign the bill, the president signed the bill December 22nd. 2017, and it didn't take effect until 2018. And the strong growth, 6.8% increase in income for the median income family of four. I mean, right dead center, 6.8% growth in 1 year, 2019. That took place after the Republicans lost the House of Representatives, for crying out loud, because they didn't have the growth before. The tariffs hurt the economy. You may argue that that's a cost you're willing to bear, but it hurts the economy. It does great damage to people's life savings, as you point out, but also to jobs and incomes and wages. Getting that settled can be a tremendous boon. The sooner, better. Getting the tax bill passed, and that's why there's a big push to do it now, this month, next month, not in the fall. We need it to, and it will take effect on January 1st of this year. So we've been telling businessmen and women, go ahead and make investments, go ahead and hire people, know that this is what your taxes are going to be.
Right.
Which is why I wish they were willing to say a little bit more. They want to make everything in there permanent, but they should make the list. These are the things that will be permanent. You can make decisions based on this. They haven't been saying that because for negotiating reasons, they haven't taken that approach. I think that's a mistake. But as soon as you pass the bill, you do the same thing. You make it clear. Here's what the rules are for the next 50 years. Let's go.
Yeah, and then you've got, everybody knows what it is. The market is calm because the market doesn't have uncertainty. Everything is locked in. The 401ks come back. Interest rates need to come down. I'm looking at the pre-market right now. It's taking the Dow over 40,000, almost 700 points up in the pre-market trading. Looks like it could be another good day. Yesterday was pretty decent. Today could be pretty decent. Some of the volatility seems to have left the market. Grover, I mean, there's some optimism right now, isn't there?
Well, all the signs are that the president is able to accomplish what he said he hoped to do. These tariffs that were put up were devastating to the American consumer. Okay, they were also devastating to other countries. So the question was, were we going to have to live with them, or were we going to negotiate them down? And it looks as though for a number of major countries, and if China and Europe are in, that's the big ball game.
Yep.
Japan's great. That's important. India's great. But Europe and China are the two big countries that it matters a great deal whether we come to some sort of agreement. If we get improvement on the trading rules with those countries, and then a lot of the little countries, Israel had tariffs against the United States, for crying out loud.
Sure.
Some of these countries you do a lot for, and then you hear they're kicking us in the shins over some little thing, and they come and say, okay, that's done, not happening anymore. Okay, why did it take a nuclear bomb to make some of these people knock it off? Well, it did, evidently.
It did. It took Donald Trump to basically carpet bomb the economy worldwide. Look, China being down 77% of their exports to the United States, they can't tolerate that for very long. Grover, I got to leave it right there. Grover Norquist, Americans for Tax Reform. Always appreciate talking to you, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to have you in D.C.
Good to be here. Has this odor, this place, D.C. It's a swampy smell. It's kind of odd. Good to be here, though. After the break, we'll have Peter Galuli from the Wellness Company talking about your long-term health and how you can improve it. We'll be right back. All right, back at it now. You probably saw this yesterday, but what a change it is. Bobby Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Bobby Kennedy, the Health and Human Services Secretary, put out a plan to get rid of dyes, petroleum-based dyes in our foods that are basically banned around the world, but not here. Pretty crazy, actually, that we still have those things. And joining me now is Peter Gillooly. He is the CEO of the wellness company, and good health is his business. Peter, good to have you back on the program.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Good news here. 36 food dyes, commonly used in soda, candy, cereal, and in drugs, right? All being removed. That's a step forward for health in America, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is, Steve. Look, food is either the slowest poison or the best medicine and the slowest poison. We've been dealing with this for a long time in the United States, which is a problem that's unique to us. In Europe and even Russia, these things have been banned for a long time. And I would say that those people are remarkably more healthy than us. I mean, you see these Europeans who go and have big pasta dinners, they don't gain a pound. Whereas Americans are fat. Something like 70% of us are overweight. It's a major health problem, and we end up paying for it through higher healthcare costs and a lower quality of life.
Yeah. Obesity is certainly, I mean, if you go out, and I talk about this a lot on the program, if you take a photograph from 1965, a high school graduation class, pick your town, I don't care where, then compare it to 1985, 2005, and 2025, we've evolved into a different species that weighs about twice as much as we did in 1965. I mean, it really is remarkable, isn't it?
It's really sad, Steve. I mean, for the richest country in the world to be living like we do, I mean, we've actually seen lifespans in the U.S. shrink, not continue to grow, which is something that generation after generation of Americans could have counted on since we were founded back in the 1700s. And I think it's really about time that we slow down and ask ourselves why. So when we see folks like Bobby Kennedy rock the boat by banning food dyes or going after the vaccine, we really need to step back and examine everything we're putting in our body from a 360 view. I think it's killing us. And I think as Americans, we need to demand more from ourselves and demand more from our leadership. I'm really, really happy that the Trump administration has empowered HHS to take steps finally against industry who have been kind of taking the shortcuts when it comes to manufacturing our food, even from the pesticides that we're putting on our vegetables. There are so many different things that we can do across the board that are going to have a cumulative effect on our health. And I hope by the time Donald Trump's administration leaves office in 4 years, we see a marked change in food laws and regulations.
Make America healthy again. I mean, a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, whether they voted for Donald Trump or not, identify with this ideal of being healthier again, of not feeling so lousy. And you make a great point. You know, you go to Italy and you have a big meal of pasta, you don't feel all bloated and wrecked. You go to, a restaurant in America, you eat something and you just feel bloated, you feel lousy. Enriched bleach this and this high fructose that and all this garbage. And look, the pharmaceutical companies, the folks that are also going to lose their food dyes apparently, cash in on this deal. They're trying to sell Ozempic to 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds because once they're on, and this is what's sad about this, Peter, once they're on this weight loss path at 6, 7, 8 years old, they'll keep them there forever. And then they become a customer. Then they become a gold mine. So their misfortune, their bad health becomes a place where the pharmaceutical company mines for money, right?
Yeah, we've talked extensively, Steve, on the show about the 6-care model that America has, right? The pharmaceutical industry, the insurance industry, the healthcare industry, they're in it for treating the symptoms, not treating the root cause of disease. And that's really cost Americans dearly over the years, because rather than figuring out, okay, what lifestyle changes, what changes in habits do we need to instill, or diet, to actually address the cause of disease, we're just treating the symptoms with more and more pharmaceuticals. And oftentimes, the pharmaceutical has a side effect that's going to mandate another pharmaceutical. Yeah. And on and on. And then we get to a state where everybody's miserable, nobody's healthy.
Bad
we have
cycle.
Things running wild like celiac disease for gluten and nut allergies, things that you don't see anywhere else in the world.
So at the wellness company, you've got something different. Ozempic is coming out, I think, with a pill form. They've got all these different things, and I see people, and look, I'm glad they lost weight. People that I know, I look at them, man, they've lost 100 pounds. I don't say anything, but obviously they've taken drastic measures. But there's something at the wellness company that you think is more effective and, frankly, safer.
Yeah, all of these companies are pushing these injectable drugs like Ozempic that they're requiring consumers to shoot into their abdomen to get healthy. I mean, you have to be pretty desperate to want to do that, Steve. We're coming up with a weight loss and diet program called Drop, which is an oral solution that you mix in your water every morning, and it helps suppress appetite. Together, and this is the most important part, you need to pair that with lifestyle changes and dietary changes. We're also launching Wellness Farms this summer, Steve. We're going to have fresh, organically farmed, regenerative meat that we can offer to our consumers so that they get the best possible diet. I really think, Steve, a steak is a multivitamin. At least it should be considered that way. It has all the nutrients you need. And I think that if we can get the right food on the plates and start building the right habits, we can help Americans lose weight.
I think that's beautiful. Steak is a multivitamin. I've been taking my vitamins regularly then. But I'm not on any of these products. My children are not either. We do have a diet that matters. We do move. So it's the right food. It's the right activity. It's the right approach to your body. And you talk about something at the wellness company, which is preventative maintenance, is a lot better than trying to repair the problem after it's gone off the tracks, right?
It's so much easier to prevent the car from crashing than to fix it in the repair shop, Steve. And that's really how we need to be treating our bodies.
And you can find out more. Do this. The wellness company, Peter Galuli, great doctors like Peter McCullough and all the rest have so much going on. You need to go look for yourself. twc.health/Gruber. You can find out more. You can save money by using the promo code Gruber, but I encourage you to take care of your good health and take care of yourself. Peter Galuli, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Steve.
twc.health/Gruber. There are subscriptions, things you can do all year long, ways you can have access to care 24/7. twc.health/Gruber. Membership options, it's all there for you. Stay ahead of this thing. Don't try to fix it once you get behind. All right, we'll take a break and be right back. It's the Steve Gruber Show. around the horn here, checking a few things for you. Gas is up 1 penny today. It kind of bottomed out. The national average at 3.16 here a couple of days ago. It's only at 3.17 now. It got down to 3.16.9, and then went to 3.17.1, so it's up 0.2 of a cent. So I guess not too significant, but there's a bottom there. The reason I bring that to your attention: oil prices. $64 to $68 a barrel. These are the things that impact you. Before I went to Costa Rica on spring break, was that 3 weeks ago now or 4, whatever it's been, oil was between $80 and $85 a barrel. Now it's between 64 and 68, just a touch up from where it was a week ago. But those are good energy prices, and that's good news for us in the economy. It's good news for America as we look at that. The Dow futures up over 700 points now, up almost 2% on the Dow. That would be good news. Up 2.5% on the S&P 500 and up almost 3% on the NASDAQ. Look, the markets are a little volatile, to say the least. But if it goes up on the Dow, the S&P, the NASDAQ, if they all go up today, it won't be the worst April since 1932. We've got a couple more. We got another week in the month here. In fact, it could come back and be a bit of a rally. We've had a bit of a sell-off. Gold, also very indicative of what's going on. The gold price is down by $80 today to $33.29. All right, $33.29. Didn't quite make it to $3,500 an ounce, but just think, if you had bought gold in 2023 at $1,800 an ounce and sold it at $3,500 an ounce, you'd be pretty happy today, wouldn't you? We were telling you, take a look at that. But gold, doing pretty well again today. Silver's down a little bit. Gold's down about 2.5%. There you have it. All right, still to come. We got a lot more to cover here. Coming up in the next hour, we'll talk about it here on the Steve Gruber Show. Remember to follow us on. We're broadcasting live on YouTube, live on X, live on Rumble. We're bad. We're nationwide. We're in all those places. You should be following us there. Follow me on Facebook. That's my test. I can't seem to get that to move. And I'm wondering what's happening with Facebook. Follow the Steve Gruber Show on Facebook. Back with more in a moment.